Direct variation. So remember with linear functions, we have m and b. M represents our slope, which is rise over run. And rise over run is change of y over change in x. So we use delta to represent change of y over change of x. So that's how you find slope. You find out how much the y has changed, how much the x has changed, write it as a ratio, and simplify. And for linear, even though our parent function is y equals x, that's been on a test and a quiz. Remember that? This is called your parent function. The slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. And this is a linear parent function. We're going to see other parent functions this year as we see different types. But direct variation, you've seen this in 7th grade, so it's been a little while. But direct variation is a special type of linear function. So since it's linear, it makes a line whenever you graph it. But what's special about it is it goes to the origin. The origin is at 0, 0. So if it goes to the origin, then your y-intercept, the b, is 0. So the direct variation equation is just going to be y equals kx. No plus or minus a b, because it goes to the origin. K is called your constant of proportionality. It's basically how the y values increase based on whatever the x is. It's being multiplied by some number k to get your value. So k is found by doing y over x. So when it goes through the origin, the way you can find your k or your slope, if it goes through the origin, is just divide y by x. So it says determine whether or not the equation represents a direct variation. So the equation for direct variation is y equals kx. So anytime you see it like this, you actually have to solve it for y so that you can see what does y equal. So draw your line down your equal sign. This is our standard form equation. We've got to move things around. So we're going to subtract 2x on both sides. That cancels out. We carry down the 3y equals. We no longer need the 0, so we're just going to put equals negative 2x. It would be plus or minus some number if there was something, but there's not. It's plus 0. And then the last step is to get y by itself. This is multiplication. The opposite of multiply is divide. So we're going to divide by 3 all the way through. So we get y equals negative 2/3 x. So we're asked, is it direct variation? We'll look at the number in front. That's our k value. K equals negative 2/3. There is no plus or minus b, so it is a yes. It is direct variation. So I'm just putting yes because it says determine whether or not the equation represents direct variation. So yes. The next one, this needs to be solved for y also. So we see a 2y, we see plus 3. We've got to move that plus 3 to the other side. So we're going to minus 3. Carry down the 2y. we cannot combine these. One's an x and one's a constant. So you just rewrite them right next to each other. 4x minus 3. Still need to get y by itself, so we divide by 2 all the way through. Y equals 4 over 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2x. Then I'm going to leave this as just 3 over 2 because it can't be reduced. So see how it has a number here, but it also has a plus or minus a b. To be direct variation, it cannot have this. So this is a no. It is not direct variation. So that's how it's represented in an equation. In a graph, it's represented as going through the origin. So put a dot at the origin. Direct variation graphs are linear and go through the origin. So this is direct variation. We just need to find the constant of proportionality. So it's y equals kx. So let's find another pretty point. Here's another pretty point. So we can find the constant proportionality on this just by finding the slope. So how much does it increase by? What's the rise? And what's the run? So our slope is, or our constant proportionality is 4. So you would do slope, but for it to be constant proportionality, it goes to the origin. So I just found the slope, and there is no plus or minus. It'd be 0. What's the constant proportionality? It's 4. So k equals 4. Okay, so this is how you're going to see some problems. So we've got to look at this commonly used phrase, y varies directly as x. That's the phrase that will clue you in on this is a direct variation. See, directly, varies directly. When two variable quantities have a constant ratio is like a fraction a over b, or y over x. Those are ratios. When they have a common ratio, the relationship is called direct variation. It is said that one variable varies directly as the other. So the commonly used phrase is y varies directly as x. To solve problems that have this phrase, you can set up and solve a proportion. Do y'all remember using proportions back in middle school? So look here. 10 over 12 equals 2 over. So whenever we solve for this, we find the common multiplier, right? 2 times what is going to give us 10? 5. So times 5. So then that gives us 10. But what here? What times 5 is going to give us 12? How do we find that? Or I guess it's really divided by, right? We could do it that way. 10 divided by 5 gives us 2. So how do we find n? Yeah, divide by 5. So it might be a decimal, but that's okay. 12 divided by 5, 2.4. Okay, I'm going to show you another way to get this. I don't know if you know this or not, but it's cross multiply and divide. Do y'all remember that? Okay, you cross multiply the two numbers that you see, and then you divide by the last number. So I would multiply 12 times 2 to get 24. Then I'm going to divide by 10. 2.4. It's the same thing. It's just a different way of working it out. It's helpful whenever the numbers don't easily divide like this one. So see how this is easily divided by 5? So that makes it easy. But if it's not, then you use the cross multiply and divide. You cross multiply the two numbers that you see, the ones that there's diagonals. Then you divide by the number that doesn't have a match. So see how this is 10 and n? You divide by the 10. Okay, let's look at the other one. If we look here, 9 times what is going to give us 14? It's not an easy number. So we can use the cross multiply and divide. So I'm going to cross multiply the two numbers I see and then divide by the other one. So 9 times 7, then divide that by 14. So x equals 4.5. So if you see that the ratio is easy, do it. If it's not easy, then you cross multiply the two numbers you see and divide by the other number, the third number. Okay, so let's look at how this is going to be on questions. It says, suppose y varies directly as x. Y equals 16 when x equals 8. Find y when x equals 16. What we're going to do is we're going to set up a proportion. Proportions have to be the same pattern. So if I do y over x, then I'm going to have to do equals y over x. You can't do y over x and then x over y. So we're going to set it up that way. So when y is 16, so that's going to go on top. That's my y. When x is 8. So x is 8, so it goes on the bottom. Y is 16 equals the other fraction. It says find y. So do we know what's on top if it says find y? That's the one that we don't know. When x is 16. So it looks like that. So the important thing about setting up proportions is just making sure that you're consistent. If you do y over x, then your other fraction has to be y over x. You can't flip-flop it. All right, so solve this one. Is this an easy ratio to work out, or would you rather do cross multiply and divide? Yeah. What do you do with 8 to get 16? Times 2. So then the top is going to be times 2. What's 16 times 2? 32. But cross multiply and divide works also. So we could have done 16 times 16 and then divided by 8. Oh, y'all can't see that. And so that equals 32. It's the same answer. All right, let's look at 8. Suppose A varies directly as B. So now we have two different variables, A and B. So I'm going to go ahead and put A over B equals A over B. And then I'll plug in the numbers. A is 5, so that's my top, when B is 12. So it's 5 over 12. Find B. So we don't know what B is. I know it's on bottom though, so I'm going to put in the letter B because that's what I'm finding. When A equals 6, so it looks like that. This one's not an easy one. 5 times what gets me 6? Like, that's not an easy one. So I would cross multiply and divide. So I would multiply 12 times 6 and then divide by the other number. So B equals 2.88. Let's look at number 5. At a local grocery store, the cost of apples varies directly with the weight. So, cost of apples varies directly with weight. A 5-pound bag, we're going to underline or highlight, whatever you want to do. 5-pound bag is $7.87. Which of the following best represents the cost of a 3-pound bag, if they're the same? So it says cost varies directly with weight. So that means I'm going to put cost over weight. So you need to set up and solve a proportion. So if the first fraction is cost over weight, the second fraction is also cost over weight. So the first one would be, it costs $7.87. That's my cost, and 5 pounds. Cost over weight. And it's asking, what is the cost? So that's the one I want to find. So I can put that as a variable. I'm going to put it as X for a 3-pound bag. So just be consistent. I can't stress that enough. As long as you're consistent, your proportion will be set up correctly. This one's not an easy one because 5 times what gets me 3. So instead, do your cross multiply and divide. $7.87 times 3, then divide by the 5. 4.722. But it's money, so we need to round to the nearest penny. So that'd be 2 decimal places. So we'd write this as a sentence though, because it says which of the following best represents. So a 3-pound bag costs $4.72. That's an L, by the way. I'm going to do a cursive L. I want you to set up and solve number 6. So you should be highlighting and underlining the important information, set up and solve the proportion. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and work it out. It says distance traveled varied directly with miles. So it would be distance varies directly with hours. Sorry, hours. So distance for the first one is 268 miles. And it took 4 hours. Equals, it says how long will it take to go 938 miles? So miles go on top. How long will it take? That's hours. We don't know. So we're going to set it up. I don't know about that. That's not a common multiple. So just go ahead and cross multiply and divide. 938 times 4, and then divide by the other number, 14. So that came out perfectly. Ooh, that's a long time in a car, right? So it says, we need to write our sentence. If the truck continues to travel at the same rate, how long will it take for the truck to go 938 miles? It will take 14 hours to travel 938 miles. Go ahead and glue in this one, and then the correlation versus causation, and you have an assignment.